Good morning, everybody. It is, 8:44 on a Monday. And as promised, this is the first of the series of my testimony. And, like I said, this is just my personal testimony. It's not really anything to be distributed, to argue about. It's what I personally went through. Where God was in my life in that time period. And, the revelation I had for that specific time period, now that I'm older and know and have a little more knowledge of who God is and where he really is and was in my life at the time. Negative comments can just keep to yourselves. I don't deal with trolls nicely. However, I won't comment back to you, so just don't waste your time. I will ignore you. Other people may not, but I will ignore you and your comments. And just basically know that if you're gonna comment negatively or decide to cyberbully me or whatever the case may be, I don't envy you. How you judge and criticize me is how God's gonna criticize and judge you, or rather, how God's gonna judge you. So, if you decide that after you write something's whatever negative, then, just repent, accept Christ, move on. I forgive you. I've made, rude comments to people. I've gotten irritated with people on many occasions for things, and, I've thought about it later and went, yeah, I shouldn't have said that. Okay. I'm sorry. I tried to get as much of the glare, as much as the glare as I could get out of there, but I'm not going to put a box around my head, so I'm sorry. That being said, I'm just going to move forward with my personal testimony up until I was 16, 17-ish. We'll go in there. Up until my first son. Maybe. I'm not going to say yay or no about that. We'll go up till I'm 16 today, and then we'll move forward from 16 into my first child. Actually, I think we'll go up into my first child today. Maybe. Maybe not. We'll see. So, most people who meet me, they don't like me. I don't know why. I don't personally care. It's always bothered me in the sense that it's like, why do people hate me? You don't even know me. You don't know anything about me. You don't live with me. You don't see me on a daily basis. Hearsay. And we are big to go on a lot of hearsay and go with the rumor mill. Hey, I heard this about so-and-so. Hey, did you hear this about so-and-so? Let me tell you, back in the day, man, I know why people talked about me back in the day, but that's neither here nor there. I'll get into that later. That being said, I was born, back in the late 70s, and, my parents, from my understanding, my parents cared about each other, loved each other. They didn't get married until after my mom was pregnant with me, so I guess I was conceived out of wedlock. Worst case scenario for any grandparent back in the day. But at least my parents got married. They still care about each other today, although they are divorced. They still talk and they're kosher with each other. And if they watch this, it ain't a lie. You guys get along. That being said, I didn't have a perfect childhood by any means. My parents fought all the time. My dad was a farmer and a truck driver, and loved and cared about his family a lot. My dad is one of 9 kids. And by the time I was born, I had a lot of cousins already. I had a lot of cousins already. I don't remember where exactly my dad fits as far as in the line of kids go. I just know he's not the youngest. I have an aunt and an uncle who are the youngest, who I'm friends with my aunt on Facebook. And I mean, once my parents got divorced, it really is sad because we were super close. I was super close with my cousins and that side of my family. But once my parents got divorced, it didn't stay that way, and it kind of disappoints me because that was a bigger side of the family I actually got along with. But, I mean, to a point anyway, we was close, but there were quirks. We're cousins, we're family, we don't always, everything's not perfect. Movies make everything perfect. We're not living in the movies. That being said, I, as a kid, family was important. Like I said, my dad was one of 9, and he really loved his family and cared about his family, was always part of his family, whether that was, whatever the reasoning was there. We lived with my grandparents, my dad's parents, a lot. For financial reasons, my dad's family was never really super great with money. Still aren't today. I'm not nitpicking. Everybody's got issues. Everybody has their quote-unquote vices, the thing they turn to make them feel better. Well, that side happens to be gambling and not being really well with money. This isn't about them. This is about me. So basically, I grew up bouncing from place to place most of the beginning. I don't really remember. I think my earliest memory is I was 3 and my dad was working on a farm, and it was more common back then because people were more trustworthy that the farm help lived on the farm. So my mom, my dad, and we lived on the farm that my dad was working at. And they have, separate quarters. We lived in a trailer on the property, so my dad could get up and do chores, and it was farm work. You got to be up early, you got to do the things, and travel time, it's just, we needed the place and he needed the help. So that's how that worked out. Well, my earliest memory happens to be when I was 3, and it had snowed a lot, and there was a huge snow pile pushed up. They had shoved all the snow up by the barn, I remember, and it was a huge, it probably wasn't as big as I think it is. It was probably small to me now, but as a kid, at 3 years old, the thing was ginormous. You could almost get up on the roof of the barn. That was my opinion. I was 3. So we went out sledding, all the kids, because the farmer had kids that were older than me, and their friends had come over, and we all went out sledding. In that time frame, my earliest memory happened to be one of interest now that I look back at it. Very interesting. Apparently that is when I was messed with, I guess you want to. I'm not gonna put it out there that it was molestation, because I really don't know. I don't know the kid. All I remember is what happened. I'm not gonna go into details, but I'm just gonna leave it at I was messed with, and I think my biggest memory of that was my mother's reaction to it, because I'm like, what the heck, I've always for some reason, ever since, I've always downplayed what I call, oh my gosh, situations. Like, somebody died. Oh my gosh. Well, yeah, somebody died. That's a serious thing. An animal died. People can get over emotional about things. Not that that's a bad thing. I'm not saying that's a bad thing at all, but if my beloved dog were to die tomorrow, I hate to say it, but you're not going to see me go, and freak out. Not that it wouldn't hurt my feelings, not that it wouldn't bother me, but I have 3 kids in the house that it's going to affect way more, and I have to be the strong one to hold it together. Have had that happen. Terrible thing when that happens. But back to this. It was innocent, and I don't think it was intentional. I mean, I could be wrong. The kid could be really messed up and did it on purpose. I don't know. I was 3. He was around 10-ish, somewhere in there. Who knows? Kids are kids. Not that I'm downplaying it, and I don't want to hear the comments of, oh my gosh, did you ever press? I'm like, why? I don't know the kid's name. I don't remember him. As far as I know, the guy that my dad used to work for is dead. I really don't care. I have forgiven that child. I've moved on. I didn't find out that first memory I ever had was me being quote-unquote molested until I was 15 and in an argument with my mother about my best friend. That's when it hit me, and like a chain link came together and went, clink, and all the memories lined up, and I went, oh, that's why. That's down the road on this, though. Moving forward on that, like, we always bounced around. My mother is a very, I don't want to say intense. She's a very, for lack of a better word, she's very stressed out all the time over things that don't need to be stressed about. Everything was an oh my god situation, sorry Lord, but it was seriously an oh my gosh situation. Like, if she lost or she misplaced her keys, it was a thing. I mean, it was a rant and a rave for a half an hour, cussing and cursing up and down the house, and this and that, and blaming the kids, and and then come to find out she left them in the car. It wasn't anybody's fault, but we had to listen to this for. I mean, it was constant, unintentional verbal abuse. I mean, they would call it today verbal abuse. Do I call it verbal abuse? No, Mom and Dad yelled a lot. I mean, a lot. My parents were always fighting. My dad was always up and leaving. Up and leave. Gone. So, right there, looking back, I'm not a victim. I'm not claiming victimism. I'm not taking on that role at all. I'm just saying this is what happened. My mom and dad fought a lot. My dad was always leaving. Always leaving us alone, which, being a woman going through something similar down the road, I understand the anxiety, the stress, the fear that probably got in there, like, deep, because it's like, if you're out in the country, we were out in the country, I was little still, and my dad's like up and gone, took the car and the only vehicle we had, and here we are stuck. Mom can't go nowhere, it's the middle of winter sometimes, and it's just like, yeah, it was tough. They didn't have a clue, not covering for my parents, but like, you raise your kids how you were raised. In my family, we were raised with a lot of screaming and yelling, and even if it meant we cared about people, that's how we showed that. We didn't do the whole loving, oh, it's okay, honey. No, none of that. No. My grandparents were like the best. My mom's parents were like the best. They lived on a lake. They had a cute little cottage. It was like awesome for my age, because I mean, they live on a lake. You got a beach, you got water, you got kids. I mean, there you go. And then you got grandparents that really care and keep you kind of in line. And I mean, my grandfather was very stern, but he had to be. He was a teacher. He was a math and a science teacher. But he was very stern. I remember the only time, and it may have happened more than that, but I remember there's only one time specifically that I can remember that I ever got spanked spanked by my grandfather, my mom's dad, and that was for going to my grandmother, I think. And I don't remember how old I was. I have no idea. I know I was little, but my grandfather took me in the pantry and whopped me a good one. Let me know why. And then, of course, you cry afterwards, and his big thing was, yeah, just keep crying. We'll get louder. I don't understand that, but whatever. I mean, we were raised how we raise our kids how we were raised, and that's all I can go on is that. Um, there were, looking back and trying to find the place where God could have been and all that, a lot of things could have happened. A lot worse. That first messed with situation, dude. I mean, that could have gone a whole lot worse. We lived on a farm. I mean, I think there were pigs even. I could have ended up disappearing. Who knows? But I believe God was in there the whole way. We don't get to choose our parents. We don't get to choose where we're born into. God chooses that. It says He put us together in our mother's womb. So it was like, yeah, okay, my parents weren't married at the time, but God saw how their life was gonna go, and went, it doesn't matter. I'm gonna do this. I'm gonna put this child here for this time, way down the road, 40 years down the road, 40 some years down the road, to make this video to maybe help somebody out. Fast forward some more. Okay, we moved around a lot until I was about 11 and a half. I think I stayed in one school. I think there was literally one or two schools that actually stayed from the beginning of the year to the end of the year, which is a huge deal. I mean, up until that would have been fifth grade. So you figure was it third grade or fourth? I think it was fourth grade. Fourth grade, we lived in West Bend, and I went to school in West Bend, and we started the year out there, and I ended the year there, which was a huge deal. We lived in a really nice, what I considered a really nice apartment. Yes, it was a 2-bedroom. Yes, I had to share a bed with my brother. Yes, that's a little weird and creepy, but not as creepy as people make it to be now. It's like you deal with what you got. Most of the time, I slept on the couch, on a pull-out bed, so it was whatever. I didn't like sleeping next to him either because he kicked and squirmed and flailed his arms. And Josh, if you watch this, it's true. You flail everywhere. Anybody, whatever. Excuse me. But even during all this time, there was a lot of, because of what happened when I was 3, there was a lot of things in there that shouldn't have been. Curiosity of things, wanting to be messed with just because it felt good. You tickle kids, it's fun. They like to come back for tickling, and those things. Well, this was unnatural things. This was inappropriate things. This was more adulty, but not as adulty as you think. Like, it was stupid, silly kid curiosity touching. But what I always found curious throughout my whole youth was, like, my biggest thing was nobody paid attention. Even in my family, I was an outsider. Like, you've heard the term black sheep. Like, even in my family, I was kind of an outsider, and I didn't ever understand that. I know for a long time, I'm like, okay, maybe because on my mom's side of the family, it's because my mom and dad got married, and nobody on my mom's side of the family really liked my dad. My grandparents wasn't really keen on my dad, and that's because you have to understand my mom's side of the family. My mom's side of the family is all, hoity-toity. They're all doctors and lawyers and psychiatrists, and you watch the middle class people, and that's what you get. Get down. Get down. I'm sorry, my dog is barking because there's a dog walking. And there goes my clock. But it yeah. So I always considered, like, I was an outsider. I was never gonna measure up. I always felt like I was never gonna measure up to anything they wanted from me. My mom always had issues with her weight, and because I had a little bit of a belly at such a young age, I mean, it's whatever. I feel like that was kind of, it was pushed down, and then the work, what I've come to know as workers has started, and it was like, oh, like, I picked on my mom's legs. I kids are curious, and there's no filter. So it's like I commented on my mother's legs, I think one time it was like how they look like vacuums. And like for some reason genetically we have really weird legs. Like we don't have the typical, you know, we're heavier set, but it's not on the top. Like our legs, our thighs, and our calves are bigger than most people. And people are like, oh, what's wrong with you? Is it circulation? Maybe it is circulation. I don't know. Nobody's figured it out yet. So, you know, it's always been that way. And my mom's lost a ginormous amount of weight lately, and she looks fabulous. And I went through some things, and I went through gastric bypass in 05, and I lost some weight too, but my legs were always still, you know, trying to buy jeans, forget it. It's a pain. But, moving forward. So yeah, as a kid, I was, you know, I always felt like an outsider. I didn't fit the mark. It was like a square peg in a round hole. I didn't fit. Even in my own family, as big as it was, on both sides, which back in the day when my mom's family got together for family reunions, it was a blast. But even then, I felt like I was an outsider. I know I play with the kids and everything, but it's like, for some reason, like, I always had the mentality of, like, we were poor and lower class than the rest of the bunch. I don't know why. I do now, but I didn't then. And, you know, so you're coming into all that, and then you hit puberty. And then, you know, my parents decided the last time we moved, it was like, my grandfather talked to my mom and my grandfather talked, and my grandpa's like, hey, listen, we can, you know, we're willing to help you out, but this has to stop. The moving around, the constantly, you know, you got to make a choice. And so basically, my mom kind of got an ultimatum, but she was thinking about it anyway, where it was like, okay, if you leave him, we'll get you the house and you can pay us rent on the house that we get you, but he can't be there. So that's when the separation started. And it was supposed to be for a little while until my dad got his stuff together, which, you know, that was forever ago. I'm in my 40s now, and that was when I was 11 and a half. Yeah. My dad still bounces from place to place. I mean, he stays longer than a little while, but I think if he was still trucking, he probably wouldn't. He's retired, of course, now, but the name of the game is this. We moved to, we lived in Wisconsin the whole life, so we moved to Fond du Lac, North Fond du Lac specifically. And that's where I finished. I mean, that's where pretty much the rest of my life was growing up until I was about 19, and then I started stepping out and doing things. But when I turned 12, stop. So when I turned 12, maybe it was it had to be my 13th birthday that this happened. So when I moved into North Fond du Lac and I started the new school year, okay. So I'm going to show you a couple pictures in here of me. So this is me when I was, it says age 4. So that's actually, that was actually our house. I think we were still living in the trailer, working. My dad was still working, I believe. So I don't know how you can see that. We were making cookies. I was a happy kid, see? The attire was weird. This is me when we moved to Watoma, which is actually, it was a really cool house. I love that house. It was 2 stories. That's my dog Boomer. So I had to be about 5 because I was going to kindergarten or Head Start, kindergarten and Head Start, something like that. When I moved to Fond du Lac, I did resume this right. When I moved to Fond du Lac, I was 11 and a half, so I was age 5. So this is me at age 11 and a half. Which is funny because my son is like is he 12 or 13? I think he's 13. I don't know. Can't even remember how old my kid is. That's funny. He's one of the two. I'm not entirely sure he's a teenager yet. But that being said, that was pretty much the consistency of up until then. Now, growing up, living, constantly with my grandparents and stuff, when we lived in the same town as my grandparents and even in Watoma, we did go to church on Sundays. I grew up Methodist, and we went to church on Sundays. My grandmother played the piano every Sunday unless she was, like, on her deathbed sick, which wasn't very often, or if they went on, like, vacation or something, which wasn't, real often, but for the most part, my grandmother played piano every Sunday for church. So I grew up knowing a lot of the people in the church. You fast forward to my grandmother's funeral, and a lot of them didn't really remember me, like I was a blur in their eyes. But I honestly think I was just covered in God's glory, and they just couldn't see me anymore because I didn't have the religious spirit on me, which I don't think I really ever really took on, because it's like I may have had it until I got saved and then realized, like, God opened that up and went, bye. This is not how I like. This is not how I work. You can't put me in a box. So, that being said, I, moved to Fond du Lac at 11 and a half. My birthday's in December, so we started out the school year. No, I think we got there, it was like either just the beginning of the school year or towards right before Christmas, because I hadn't turned 12 yet. So, it was either the first day or the second day I met my best friend. Well, she's ex-best friend now, but my best friend, and she's the only person to come up to me and sit down next to me, and she's very blunt. She's still very blunt. If you ever met her, she's still very blunt. She sat down next to me and said hi, and started talking to me, and basically was my only friend for a very long time. A lot of the kids were like, standoffish, and I mean, kids back then, there was no social media. We were the social media, how you went places to find out if your friends were able to hang out, or you called them. You didn't just text, hop online, see if they're on Facebook. Where are you? What are you doing? No, you literally, if you didn't have access to a phone, you got on your little bike and you went. That being said, we stopped going to church. When we weren't around my grandparents, we didn't go to church. We had our beliefs. We believe in God and all these things, and we celebrated holidays like everybody else. And there was a lot more tradition with our holidays. We went to grandparents for Thanksgiving and Easter and all these things because it was cozier. Good memories. Just good memories. Pardon me. On my 13th birthday, however, I had, we'd been there for a while. On my 13th birthday, I went to bed. I remember not really sleeping the greatest that night. Something was weird. And I couldn't figure it out. So I wake up on my 13th birthday, the day of. My best friend had slept over. And I woke up in the foulest mood. And the whole time I'm in this bad mood, I'm like, what is going on? Why am I being this way? What the heck? Like, it's almost like watching a movie of yourself going through the day. Like, I couldn't figure it out. I mean, I know now what it probably was, but I could not for the life of me figure it out. I'm like, I was in a crabby mood. I didn't want anything to do with anybody, honestly. I just wanted to crawl back in bed, cover up with my blankets, and not move. And just stay in the dark. And just stay undercover and just be done with the world. I wasn't suicidal, but I just didn't want to. It was like I didn't want to be anything anymore. I just didn't want to be. So, fast forward, I literally punched, I think, I was hitting my best friend for no reason. She walked past me and I just started hitting on her. Just violently hitting on her for no reason whatsoever. Didn't want to blow out my birthday candles. Didn't want to... Nothing. No. Came out in a hot yeah, I'm gone. Back in my bedroom, and that was the end of it. And that started a whole world of just darkness. The only thing I can describe it is darkness. I got into Ouija boards. I got into death metal. I mean, Metallica, Megadeth. Not that Guns N' Roses is death metal, but I mean, I've just embraced the heavy metal scene. In this time frame, my brother had made friends with the neighborhood kids and found the neighborhood cool guy. Okay? Well, being 13, you have puberty, you got all the hormones and the googly eyes at boys, and, boys became woohoo. Well, this boy became woohoo, and he was all, not a whole lot older than me, but older than me by a few years. But he was still like, oh my god, in my eyes. So I'm a dorky little 13-year-old, and he's a little older, and I'm doing all these stupid little kiddie things to get attention from him, and I mean, he was a really cool guy. We used to play cards all the time. He cheats like crazy, though. We play, like, Rummy, and we play Uno, and like, in the same time frame, after a couple of years, my mom decided to find a boyfriend, and, if you watched my previous video, that was the person I was talking about that I had to forgive. Every weekend was basically, he got drunk. I mean, the guy drank from the time from noon. He'd have coffee from the time he got up till noon. As noon hit, it was a beer until he passed out. And not just a beer, it was beer after beer after beer, sometimes case after case. You get the picture. Well, on the weekends, it was extremely fun, because then he would come and hang out at my mom's house, or at our house. Well, I will never forget that first time he tried to kill my mother. I was in my bedroom. I don't think my brother was home. I think he was gone at his friend's house for the night. I could be wrong. I'm sure he'll correct me if he watches this. But I heard my mother scream, "Jenny, call the cops." Okay, trailers are not that long. Mine was at the front. My bedroom was at the front of the trailer. My mom's was at the back of the trailer. And I come running out to get the phone, because the phone was in the kitchen and by the island there. And I come out to grab the phone, and, I mean, here he is. My mom's running out of the bedroom. He's coming after her, I mean, in full force psycho mode. And, I mean, he's just drunk and stupid, and I don't know, probably high on God knows what at the time. And right there in the kitchen, he's sitting there choking my mom. He's got her held against the thing. Here I am, like, a 13 or 14-year-old. I think I was 14 at the time, and I'm like, I am freaking out. This is the first time I've ever seen this kind of thing in my own house. I mean, I watched movies about it, but this is the first time I've seen it in my house. And it's like, okay, now you're in the moment. Now what are you going to do? So I'm on the phone. I called 911. I was like, dude's trying to kill my mom right now in the kitchen. I'm freaking out. I have grabbed the butcher knife. I'm sitting there. My hand is shaking. I'm at the bar. I got the phone in one hand. I'm talking to a 911 operator. It was bad. It didn't turn out bad, but it was an every weekend occurrence. Because, it was, because, I mean, my mother had a very low and still kind of has a very low self-esteem and self-worth. And I don't think she thought she deserved any better than that. I honestly think she was hoping the guy would just offer, even though in the moment it was like, crap, I still got kids. I think honestly somewhere in the back of her head, she's like, yeah, just do it. I'm done. I'm done. Please just do it. Because I know at the moment my mom wasn't completely sober either. Not that she was drunk or anything like that, but we all have our vices. She had hers. I didn't really know about them until later in life, but this is my testimony. She gets one. She has her own. But that was an every weekend occurrence. Like, we were on a first name basis with the North Fond du Lac Police Department at the time. This is in the 90s, so, I mean, yeah. North Fond du Lac Police Department at the time, we were just, like, good friends with. And, well, not good friends with, but, like, we saw him every weekend. I'd call him and be like, yep, this is, 71 Mockingbird Lane again. It's the weekend. Yep. So-and-so's doing this. Okay, we'll be right there. Oh, it got to be amusing, honestly. I would sit in my window and watch them arrest him. And the one time it happened to be a female cop. And that had to be amusing because he just hated women. The man hated women. That was the epitome of it. He just bluntly hated women. And because he hated women, he wasn't being respectful to the female cop. Well, the female cop took him down, and she had to pepper spray him because he was not compliant. He was actually talking really stupid, threatening. He threatened to kill me every single weekend. I'm gonna kill your daughter. I was at the time in my life, I was like, go ahead, I don't care. Nobody cares anyway. Like, I don't matter. I'm a babysitter. My mom worked all the time, and I was the one taking care of my brother. Well, in this time frame, like I said, I got into Ouija boards, I got into, a lot of death metal, and all the dark. Like, dark was my best friend. I walked around in my house in the dark all the time. If my mom left to go up north, and I stayed home, there were no lights on in my house. Maybe a candle once in a while, or a few of them if I was practicing with the Ouija board or whatever. And then one night, I decided I was going to, I tried to renounce God. Because I had been, watching a lot of scary movies and all these things, and I'm like, just digging into the dark. And I don't want to bring that back right now, but, I asked the enemy, I asked Satan to come into my bedroom every single night. I call him in. Every night I wanted him in there, he was there. All I had to do was say his name a certain amount of times, and he was there. I have a few friends from back in the day that could attest that if they slept over at my house, they would see things under my bed. There were stuffed animals that would go flying across my room. If you went into my bathroom and to go to the bathroom, I had a half bath between my brother and my room. It was just a toilet and a sink, a trailer. So it was just a toilet and a sink and a little storage area and whatever. But, you sit on the toilet, you could see yourself in the mirror. Or, you not necessarily see yourself in the mirror, but you can see the mirror in front of you. And so, because it was kind of up. So if you go in the bathroom and you just, don't want to turn the light on because it's too bright, and you just go in and go potty, well, you would see a clown's face. And the best I can describe it is as, I don't want to say it because I don't want to give any credit to that disturbing writer, but more like the creepy clown with the black makeup. Like, it was a white face, but it had the white or the black lines here and just evil smile. If you know who ICP is, it looks similar to that. So we just we started calling him jokingly the clown. So that was a demon that was in my room all the time. He actually hung out in my room. He was a ghost and haunted my room. Ghosts are not real. They're demons, just so you know. And if they seem friendly and they're a familiar spirit, and they're like your dead relatives, aka if you're in heaven, why would you want to come back? You don't care about anything else. I'm just going to give you this heads up. You don't care about anything else but Jesus when you're up there. There's so many people out there that have seen heaven, had near-death experiences or whatever. You don't care about down here. You really don't. To a point. When you first get there, it's like whatever, but you don't get access to come back down. And God will send things like, visitors, not visitors per se, like relatives, but he'll send signs. Like when my grandmother died, we're like, hey, when you get there, let us know. Send a card. Kid you not, the day of her funeral, we went home to her house, back to her house, and out on a branch was a giant cardinal. Big fat one. It wasn't a female, it was a male. big fat red cardinal. Like, cool. I'm like, cool. Anyway, so I mean, I believe God does send signs and symbols back to let you know for comfort, that they've made it. That being said, I'm not entirely sure where I was. Oh yeah, hauntings in my room. Yeah, hauntings in my room. I started making friends with a ton of people that drove, by doing stupid things. I became very sexually active and promiscuous when I was 13, 14-ish. I was big into truth and dare. I was dared to do something, and like, just because of a bunch of a series of events, I found out that was something I was very good at. And like, just to get guys to hang out and show me what I thought was love, or that they gave a crap about me, or that I mattered to anybody whatsoever, that I was important to somebody in my life, or I was important to somebody even if it was for 10, 20 minutes. It didn't matter. I didn't care. It's like, you want whatever, I'll do whatever. I don't care. I got used. I allowed myself to be used and abused numerous times. Numerous times. I've forgiven myself abundantly for that, and thank the good Lord, when I was 16, he forgave me for it too. Even though I continued, it was not nearly as nutsy, because I didn't understand after I found out who God was. I didn't understand everything, and there was still that hold that Satan had hold on me with things, and my self-worth, which had attributed way back. I found out, now in my life, that that's all generational stuff that just gets a hold of you and climbs in there. And it's scriptural. There's scripture in there that, the sins of the mother and the father, well, there's truth to that. There's absolute truth to that. The Bible is a living, breathing thing that you take every little bit in there and apply it to your life, and not in literal form. The way we analyze things as people, as women, is how we're made that way for a reason, so we can understand scripture. Jesus always spoke in parables, and there's a reason for that, because the Gentiles, quote unquote, always understood. We do better with pictures, But if you take every scripture in there that he's talking to somebody else, you take it not out of context, but you make it personal. So, for the simplest one, for God so loved the world that he gave his only begotten Son, that whoever shall believe on him shall not perish, aka die. We all die, but he means after death. Excuse me. So, after we're dead, we don't die and go to hell, we go to heaven. So, that those shall not... For God so loved the world that he gave his only begotten Son, that whichever believes on him shall not perish, but have everlasting life. See, we live forever in heaven. But perish means if you die, you go down if you don't know Christ as your personal Savior, as a personal relationship. You've had a man in your life, you've had a woman in your life, you've had a personal relationship, you've had parents, you've had a personal relationship, you've had siblings, you probably had a personal relationship. You've had best friends, pets, you've had a personal relationship. Why is it so hard for us to have a personal relationship with Jesus Christ? Why? Because we're so rebellious as a people in general. We're so rebellious that we're not instantly going to get our butts whooped, so to speak. So we're just going to go do this and mess around and do all these things that we want to do because they're fun and they feel good, and it doesn't matter the consequences. Well, guess what? It does matter the consequences. I didn't know who God was. I knew there was a God. But literally when I was doing the denouncing, and I denounced, I sold my soul, so to speak, and I was selling generation after generation after generation at the time. I didn't care. Just make me something important. Never happened. The strings are always there. The puppet master is always controlling you, aka Satan. He is always controlling you. And he makes things look great and glorious, but there's always a price to pay. Don't believe me? Look at famous people. How many divorces have they been through? You want to be famous, you sell your soul. What does that mean? That means basically you give up everything just to be famous for a few minutes. You know, and it's not worth it. Because you only live once here on earth, and then it's eternity. And it's like, if you live with all this junk that I was living with every day, constant, you're nothing, you're worthless, nobody loves you, you're fat, you're ugly, you're stupid, I wasn't stupid by any means, I was in the higher classes, but I never applied myself because I didn't care. Like, my mom didn't care, I didn't care. My dad didn't care, I didn't care. My brother didn't care, I didn't care. Nobody cared about me, so why should I care about me? My grandparents cared. You know, I think honestly I probably would have been more rebellious if I would have grown up with them, but at the same time I respected them. Because we grew up, you respect your authority, you respect your elders, because if you don't, they're going to whoop your butt. And they did. You know, not regularly. My grandparents were not abusive. They were loving and stern. My grandfather had a way to talk to you that he wasn't yelling. But, oh, the words cut deep. And I kind of look at that like, I think that was the Father's voice in there. Even though it was him being, you know, is him human. I think the voice of God was in there somewhere amongst the criticism. But, like, I didn't know who Jesus was until I got into a lot of trouble. When I was 15 years old, because of my promiscuousness, whatever, being promiscuous, not caring about my own life. I didn't care, you know, if I died or lived, or unless it came down to the situation where it's like, oh, I really don't want to be here. That's not how I want to go out. I got into some legal trouble. I trashed a hotel room with my best friend because this guy tried to rape me. And he didn't succeed. He was forcing himself upon me, and it's like, well, how can you rape somebody who's willing? Because if you say no, no is no. And there were witnesses, so no is no. So it's like, yeah, no. You know, and I thank God that my best friend was there at the time because she finally got a good sense about her and came to him, pushed and bullied him off of me, and I'm like, yeah, I'm out. So I went home. You know, a lot of my teenage life, God was using a lot of people to save my butt. I shouldn't be here for a lot of reasons. The first time I tried to commit suicide was 14. It was later in my 13th year. I had convinced the hottie patati to sleep with me. And, I mean, he didn't really want to, but, you know, we women have our ways of seducing people. There's, you know, and I ended up doing that, and don't do that. Any young people, don't do that, because it's not worth it. I don't care if all your friends are doing it. The feelings, women are emotional creatures when it comes to sex and those things of that nature. We are very emotional creatures, and if something doesn't go right, we feel rejection. Absolute rejection. And, you know, it's even worse if it's like, you know, people look at prostitutes and dancers and those things, and it's like, oh, they make a lot of money, I would do it too. No, you really wouldn't. You take and actually question those women on a personal level. The ones that, I mean, yeah, if they're doing it to make it through school, or yeah, they're doing it to try to better their lives, to get them out of the lifestyle. Most of them are working their way out of the lifestyle. You know, when they find somebody that they really care about, or they have children that they really care about, and, you know, people are threatening to take away their kids, they're going to turn away from that. Most of them don't want to be there, but because they had issues growing up, whether they were, you know, this or that, they don't want to be doing that. And people are like, oh, you know, I could just do that. I could lay there and not do anything, not care. It's like, if that was the case most of the time, you're not just laying there. The sick perverts that want to do things to you don't just want you to just lay there like a dummy, or they'd go buy a blow-up doll. Okay? Trying to keep this PG. But, you know, I've talked myself into situations where I'm literally calling my other best friend, begging him to come and get me because I'm afraid that something bad is going to happen. And God worked it all out where I was able to get out of the situation. I mean, even if it meant walking down dark Iowa in the middle of the night. You know, my mom had no idea I had left. She definitely didn't have a clue where I was going. I didn't have a clue where I was going. I just happened to know. I got a cab. The person got me a cab. I went to their place. And when I got there, something didn't feel right. Something didn't feel right. It was this person, this gentleman, and then there was this much older guy. And that was creepy at, I think, 14 or 15 years old. That was very creepy to me. And I'm like, I can't do this. I don't know. And you make a name for yourself, and then your name gets into the jails, and then people get out of jail, and they're calling you and going, hey, this dude. You know, back when we didn't have social media, we had bathrooms. And your parents could probably tell you, if you're under the age of, like, 20-something, that if you wanted a good time, you just go check out the bathroom stall and look for a phone number. Because that's what it was. In our town, there was a park, and there was a huge grandstand type building in the park. They tore it down now. But all over the back of that wall was written, for a good time, call, or so-and-so is this, or so-and-so. I mean, that's where our social media was. If you wanted to find out about somebody, you just go check out the walls. You know, because people wrote rude things and, you know, whatever. That was our social media. And word of mouth. You make a name for yourself, and it follows you for a very long time. I choose not to live in the town that I grew up in because of this reason. Because I've forgotten, and God's forgiven me of it, but my reputation still precedes me. And that's why a lot of people still don't like me and still hate me to this day in that town because, you know, I probably slept with their boyfriend or their best friend's boyfriend or who knows. You know, people hold on to a lot of stuff for a lot of stupid reasons. It's like they hate me, and I'm like, dude, I don't even remember that guy. You know, I don't remember doing that. Or I do remember doing that, but it's like I don't remember the name, or it's like I don't care. It's not that I don't care, I just don't care. They didn't care about me at the time anyways, whatever. You know. But I say that to say this, to end this here. I'm going to end this here because I don't want to go into just yet my salvation because there's so much to fill in the gaps. Demon possession is real. I've been through it. People that I could name names right now, you could call them and be like, hey, do you remember this? And they might be remembering of it or they might not. But I know that affected their lives and ruined some of them to the point of suicide. Ouija boards are real. They're not a game. They're not a toy. They are real. Ghosts are not friendly Casper type things. They're demons, period, plain and simple. You call them out in Jesus' name. If you have something clicking and clacking and doing something normal, oh, it's just the house, it's some, you know, the old lady that died here and whatever. Yeah, you might get something where it's an essence of somebody that might have lived there, but honestly, if you tell it to leave in Jesus' name and it doesn't leave, it's a demon. Plain and simple, and then you need to figure out what it's attached to in your house. Because if all of y'all out there that like to watch these scary movies, there's so much truth behind them that makes them, you don't even know. Ugh, who's here? But like I was saying, you don't even have a clue that these things are real. You can believe what you want. I don't care. I'm telling you the truth. You know, I introduced a girl. She was over at my house one night when I was doing a Ouija board. I'm like, oh, I'm going to do a Ouija board and call these spirits in and ha 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 ha. And heck, handles everything. I was home alone. My mom was, I think, gone for the weekend or whatever. I had a bunch of friends over. We're like, oh, yeah, we're going to mess with this. So we did. And the doors locked. They weren't. They did. The windows locked, which in a trailer is really hard to do. They don't lock. You couldn't open them. None of the windows, none of the doors, you couldn't get out of the house. They locked. You can't lock a trailer window. The newer ones, yes, but the older crank-out ones, you can't lock. There's no way to lock those things. So, my house had issues. if you watch the movie dealing with Annabelle or any of those scary movies that everybody's so enthralled with, and the horror monopoly that's going on right now is just annoying, because honestly half of them don't have a good budget to make a decent movie anyway, but that's even worse because the cheesy ones make you laugh and then it's like, oh, that's a door anyway. Playing with Ouija boards opens the door. I don't care if you close it properly or you don't close it properly. Don't buy the dang thing. And if you have it, burn it. Break it and burn it. I'm going to tell you this right now. If you get a creepy feeling off a doll or a toy of any sort, burn it. Bless it, tell it, go in Jesus' name, and burn it. Because there is nothing good that'll come out of that. Ever. I mean, I had a pentagram written in paint. I mean, it wasn't written. It was drawn in paint on the inside of my closet, that when I came to the knowledge of Christ, I had to paint over that. It was blessed and prayed over, and everything associated with my old life of darkness went in a garbage bag, and the people that helped me with that took it and burned it. People don't even have a clue. They think it's a joke, because society and things have made it such a joke that now they're influencing our children, and that really gets on my nerves. But anyway, long story short, because I am running low on time now, this is the beginning of my first series. I did a lot of things. I went looking for haunted houses. I was big on it. I literally called, Satan was my boyfriend. For at least 2 to 3 years of my life, he was my boyfriend. He would come into my bedroom whenever I wanted him to. We would do things. And people are like, how do you do it? Just trust me. Anything's possible. In that, when you're not in your right mind anyway, anything's possible. I have fallen down flat on the ground in somebody's yard, become possessed, heard myself speaking in a very low-toned voice, talking to my brother's friends who are my brother's age, so they were young, because I was like 13, 14, they were like 10, maybe 12. Just awful, awful dark things. So people come at me like, oh, that's not real. Yes, it is. Stop it. It's real. The movies that come out, such as Annabelle, yes, things can attach. For some reason, demons like to attach to dolls. I don't know why. I really don't. It's gross. It's creepy. It's nuts. I don't know how many times I've bought dolls because they gave me a creepy feeling, and God's like, take it, buy it, burn it. Brought it home, burned it. Didn't even bring it into my house because I'm like, I'm not believing that in my house. I blessed it and I burned it because I don't want it. I bound it to the doll. Binding and cursings are real, and they're nothing to do with witchcraft. That was not Satan's idea. That was all God, because God had to come up with that. So here's my testimony. Depression is, all these things are things that get into our lives. And anxiety and fear, and they just thrive on fear. The devil loves fear. He loves fear. That's why people get so excited when they watch scary movies. They like to be afraid. Why? Because it makes them feel comfortable. For some reason, there's an internal thing that makes you feel so comfortable being afraid. And it's like you want to push yourself to the limit. Like, how afraid can you be? How afraid? That's like me. That is almost like a recruiting line. Like, you know how they recruit for the army? It's like, well, how much can you take? And if you can make it out of boot camp, well, watch horrors and horrors and horrors and all these traumatic, ridiculous things. It's like, how far can you push your brain before it screws you up so bad that there's no coming back from it? Or how far are you willing to go to not care and just be over the fear and just not care of what happens to you or whatever? I was never at the point. Like, I always knew there was something more. There had to be something more. Like, I'm still here. I shouldn't be. first time I tried to commit suicide, I was into 13 years old. I got so upset because I was tired of being used for sex that I locked myself in my mother's car with an extension cord, and I was going to strangle myself. And I pulled that sucker as tight as I possibly could, and I passed out, I believe. I know I lost consciousness, but the next thing I'm seeing is I'm in a dark space. It wasn't a room, it was a dark space. And on one side was a very predominant red mass, because there was no figure to it. It was just a red mass and a voice. And on the other, there was a light. Now, the light wasn't very, I mean, it was bright, but it wasn't, like, as large as the red mass. Basically, it was like I had my hands on the cord, but somebody had their hands on each side of the cord, too. And one was pushing so the cord would loosen, and the other was pulling so it would tighten. And it was just a constant struggle. And I kept hearing, I will always fight for her. As did the red mass said, I will always fight for her, and the white mass said, I will always fight for her. So, like, I don't get it, because it's like, I'm not going to serve the Satanic Kingdom, because one, the few times I did try to do that, I didn't get anywhere. Like, I was never anybody famous, I was never anything great, I had no influence over anybody, except the little kids that I was influencing when I was playing with the occult stuff. Which I'm not proud of, and I've asked forgiveness of few people that I've been able to contact from then. I've asked for forgiveness. Some of them are no longer on this earth. They died. This is where I'm going to end this today, though. And Lord, I'm just going to pray. I'm just going to pray that somebody takes something away from here, that they're worth more than life itself, that the dark forces of this world don't have a hold on them, and if at the moment they do, that their life is worth living, and they are made for a purpose more than what they think. And Lord, I just bind any attachment of any familiar anything that maybe decide to try to come through this and hook on to anybody else. I just bind any of that negative junk. And I just pray that through this series that it would change someone's life in a positive way and turn them towards you and away from where they are, and let them know that they're worth more than nothing. We're all worth more than nothing. We're here for a purpose, and it's not just to sit on our butts, go to work, play video games, smoke weed, whatever the case may be. We're here for more than just that. We're here for more than what you think at the moment. Lord, I pray that this would bless somebody in a positive way, and I pray this in your name, Jesus. Amen. I'll see you guys in the next video, which will probably be about as long, just being honest. But you'll hear my salvation story from when I was like 15 until then. So, see y'all later.